All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. I am your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, whether you're watching this on the video side, whether you're listening to this in audio podcast form. Appreciate you all very much. Today's episode is sponsored by Imperial Pizza, now with two locations, Abbott Road in South Buffalo, 1665 in Main Street. Make sure you go check them out. One of the best places to get pizza or wings, subs, anywhere in all of Western New York. I'm joined, as usual, at this time this week by my good friend Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings. What's going on, Anth? We were talking for just a few minutes before we started rolling here. Last week we did a Bills Chiefs preview, and we're going to get into Buffalo Dallas a lot today. But anyway, last week we recorded on Wednesday. We dropped the preview on Thursday, and I don't know, within an hour or so after I have it on social media, Tyler Dunn goes and interrupts our day in our lives with a bombshell story on Sean McDermott. How you doing? And that was pretty wild last Thursday.
It was wild. And you know what? It feels almost like that we missed a week because, sometimes like, oh gosh, we miss a week. It feels like there's so much that went by.
Mhm.
And now we were together last week, and then here we are. This comes out. I mean, gosh, it feels like it wrapped a, season's worth of emotion and drama and stories and talking points into a 3-part series from Tyler. And that was that was a week, man.
It took over Twitter, social media for sure last Thursday. And, we're not going to relive all the detail. I'm not saying it's old news because it's still being talked about literally right now as we record this a lot. I don't know, man. It was one of those things, from time to time, we kind of have, you and I, or whether I have other guests on, we talk about social media and Twitter specifically and how it could be really useful, advantageous, and even fun at times. And then at others, how it could just be a big, nasty cesspool. And I really got into the weeds last week fighting with so many people just on so many different levels when it came to that article, to the point of like literally mental exhaustion. I said on my Facebook later last Thursday, I said, dude, I got to get off Twitter, man. I said, I got to go on there, post links for the show because, I got to promote the show and the links and clips and stuff like that. Maybe chime in with a couple thoughts here and there, but stay out of my mentions or such because it would just mute a lot more people. Like your guy over at Rumblings, Bruce Nolan, who's mastered the art of muting people for his own mental health, man. I just got to feel like I need to start doing the same thing because holy shit, good, bad, or indifferent. Well, there is no indifferent, good or bad. However you feel about what Tyler had to write and the situation and the treatment of McDermott and this and that, it was one of the more polarizing pieces and one of the more polarizing reactions that I've seen from fans in maybe years.
Yeah, it was a different kind of week. And I say that, and let's just put the social media part even to the side, right? And
Sure.
kind of the cesspool that continues to become, and where every day I question to myself, why do I even still have a Twitter account? But that's a conversation for another day.
Sure.
I'm a subscriber to Go Long TD. I really enjoy Tyler's work. The pieces that he puts together. And there's some pieces that he has. I listen to his podcast, some things that I really like and really agree with, some things that I don't.
Sure.
And that's what I like about his work, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I don't want it to just be, oh, here's someone that I'm, hate listening or hate reading their work, or I just agree with everything that they say. And when the story dropped and reading through the 3 parts, I was, I think I put it on social media like, hey, I'm really glad I subscribed. Like, this is a reminder of why I do this. Now, then of course things, the hot takes coming out, the aggregators grab it, like certain things that really get latched onto, like the whole 9/11 piece. And I have my own thoughts on how that could have come about or whatever, the awkwardness with that. But it was just different because obviously I had been frustrated with the play of the team, frustrated with Sean McDermott, the late game defensive lapses, right, that led to losses where, starting to think to myself, like, gosh, I never thought Sean McDermott had a locker room problem. I always just thought it was him not delivering in the bigger moments. And you start to question and you think to yourself, like, God, is it maybe time? And then I messaged you at the end of the week, right? Like, I genuinely felt bad for Sean McDermott and a sense of happiness for him, a sense of relief. When you saw that shot during the broadcast on Sunday, like when you knew the Bills were going to win the game, he's kind of crouched over, he's got his hands on his knees, and you just saw this sigh of relief, like his head dropped, like, and there might be people listening like, yes, I get it. He's a head football coach. He's a public figure. You're going to be scrutinized. We do it each week, right? If he has a blunder or those types of pieces, I get it. But just to a human being, you just saw this sense of just like, oh, that week must have just sucked. Whether it was deserve it or not, or any of those pieces or the timing. But to what you were saying, and then I'll stop rambling, it's just like, fans have been frustrated. I've been frustrated. You've been frustrated. Then that story comes out and it just becomes like, God, now I'm even more frustrated at the time. And then you take a step back, the team wins, and, kind of here we are. And it's just like, okay, can we just move forward at this point and focus on why we, like the team, the football?
First of all, there is no rambling in podcasting, Anthony. Like you're Nate Gary. If you're Nate Gary, there's rambling in podcasting. But otherwise, if your name's not Nate Gary, there's
Nate catching strays here
in podcasting. Going back to McDermott last week, him being hunched over, I had talked about it a little bit yesterday. The way he looked for like a split second in time, I was waiting for that yellow flag symbol to come on the bottom because it almost looked like he was momentarily like tortured. And it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I'm waiting for a flag to come down because he made a 4th down stop. And then after a couple seconds, I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, yeah, all right. Then I realized, all right, he's just letting the world's been on his shoulders, and it's just for a second. He just got it off for a second, and there was a moment, waiting to excel. So that was really cool. In terms of Tyler in the work he's done, look, if it's done, if you're sticking to the topic and you could disagree with him, that's cool. There's a lot of things. There's some things in that article that I don't agree with. And there's some things about that article that I don't necessarily want to say that I didn't like, but I wish would have been done differently, including here to put out 21,000 words or whatever it was. Maybe let's break that up over a couple days, man, because that's just too hard to digest. Most of us don't have the attention span for that. Not for one sitting. Like, I was really intrigued, but that's the whole thing, man. It's like, oh my God, holy shit. All right, well, what's next? And I kept going and going and going. And next thing you know, my Thursday was between reading it and fighting with people, that was gone. And the whole 9/11 thing, the only reason why I hate, first of all, it should have been reported. I mean, I don't care how long ago it was. It's news. It matters. And it's the first that any of us have heard about it. So, and obviously it was accurate because it was addressed. But what I don't like about that is that became the story, and it took away from a lot of things that were actually in the article. And I guess what pissed me off the most about reaction from fans and, quite frankly, content creators and media to an extent as well is I know Tyler so well, man, and I've known him for a long time. And he is a tough-nosed writer. He will dig. He will get into the weeds. He is an old school type of journalist. And this was a deep dive. And maybe you thought he's being too hard on him. That's very fair. Okay. And too critical with certain things. Again, very fair. But what I do know about Tyler Dunne is, which is the irony, he might be the most critical writer when it comes to how he covers something, especially if it's something that's he perceives as not good. But he's also quite literally the nicest human being on the face of this earth, which is so weird because he's one of the hardest writers, but one of the nicest people. And again, I've been blessed to get to know so many of these men and women in the media around here, Sal and Matt and Jenna. And I keep going on for days and days and days. All these people, great human beings too. Tyler is the nicest dude in the world. So for people to assassinate his character like they're accusing him of doing with McDermott, just saying, he's a hit piece and he's out to get him, trying to get him fired and this and that. It's just, I guess that's where I really dug my heels in and was going back and forth, people. Because Tyler's not that guy. I know him. He's not that guy. He's one of the most respected sports journalists in this country, not just this market. So it was that for me was the most frustrating part.
No, and again, I can understand that frustration. I understand honestly the frustration on all sides of it. If you didn't like the piece and you felt like the timing was horrible and you didn't enjoy it, that's fine. If you thought like, hey, this, again, this reaffirms some things that I thought and it's bringing it to light and things that I don't enjoy there, or, folks, I mean, I've gotten into with folks before that would be like, oh, Sean McDermott's never going to win a Super Bowl. He's a, whatever, like Marvin Lewis type of coach or Schottenheimer or this and that. And I mean, I would go back and forth with people and then it's like, okay, yeah, this, it starts to come about. I mean, it makes for, I don't want to say a great conversation because things get really skewed, but right in a time where all of a sudden it's just like, man, there's a lot to talk about. And in some ways, maybe I'm glad it all did come out on one day. I mean, listen, you could take that, not even just 3 days worth of work. I mean, you could have made that into 6 or 7 different articles if you really wanted to.
Sure.
But honestly, have it all come out on one day for the most part, and let's get through it. Let's digest it. Let's talk about it, and let's move on. Like I, you know what I mean? Like, and that was, I think, when again you saw that sense of relief from Sean McDermott on Sunday. I think there were a lot of fans that probably felt the same way. Like, okay, won the game this week, sucked. It sucked. Like all of this talk and all this stuff about the team, there's no part of it that was enjoyable for anyone.
Can we be
just, yeah.
No,
sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say, can we be fair though? Because I feel like, and this is just my own personal opinion, but I feel like if Kadarius Toney doesn't line up off sides and the Bills blow yet another 1-score lead inside of 2 minutes, that the narrative towards Sean McDermott is a hell of a lot different on Sunday night and going into this week.
It would have completely been different. I mean, I'm not looking past any of that too. And I think in some ways it's like, gosh, this sport, this game, it's so subjective. And I mean, I don't even want to get into everything with the penalty, but like there could be things during any of these games where it's just like, they don't pick up the flag against the Patriots. They call a hold against the offense in one of these situations. Like there's just different things that just happen. And there's always a woulda, coulda, shoulda. And this one, it just it worked out for the Bills. And it's like, you know what? We've been through enough shit. Like, I will take the break going in the Bills' direction, and I'll even take it going in Sean McDermott's direction. Love him or hate him or frustration or whatever it is. Like, to me, that was a little. I'm not a big believer in signs, but I think that was a little bit of a sign of just like, all right, the guy needed something. And
sure,
you know what? It should have been called, and it was. So I'll take it.
Sure, absolutely. And look, this article at the end of the day, we hear the term bulletin board material all the time, and usually it's somebody on another team who's talking shit about your team, and that goes up on the bulletin board, and sometimes that might galvanize your team. I genuinely, legitimately believe that at least to some extent, this series that Tyler put out last week had an effect on the Buffalo Bills and their emotion towards their coach, and maybe their, that little pep in your step. It does matter. That shit matters. I do believe in bulletin board material to an extent. But anyway, what fascinates me the most and why I can't stop talking about this shit, isn't even at this point what he said about Sean McDermott in there, or even about just, a lot of the mistakes he's made, whether their relationships with other players or coaches, perceived or reported, I should say at least, or in-game blunders, stuff like that. But what fascinates me is just the reaction. And I keep talking about fans, but it's not even just fans, and it's media too. And Tyler put out kind of a follow-up article. So we're taping this on Wednesday. On Tuesday, it was titled "We Write for You." And he got after the media a little bit. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. And this is coming from somebody, Anthony, who has a tremendous deal of respect for the media, and they're on this podcast a lot, but in some cases, I kind of agree with Tyler. Let me read one or two things for you. I want to get your reaction, and then we'll get into Buffalo, Dallas. He says, Tyler wrote, and this is from the new article, the 9/11 speech accounted for 474 of the 20,000 plus words. Those most furious about the McDermott problem never even read it. And I believe that, by the way. It's not uncommon for one anecdote to overwhelm an entire story. That's happened more times than I can count. But it is interesting that the local media contingent covering the Bills mostly chose to ignore news within the series itself. All but a few completely steered away from even sharing the series, perhaps in fear of either the mob or the team. I don't know. Most all waited for McDermott to speak and then reported on McDermott's words rather than the substance of the series, such as McDermott's relationship with his coaches, his relationship with Stephon Diggs at 13 seconds, the Brian Dable dynamic, et cetera, et cetera. And you might say a lot of that's old news, and it's true. But my point is, he is right. I mean, I know Matt Marino talked about it on Shout pretty extensively. Tim Graham, I know he talked about it, but a lot of these reporters just chose to ignore it. And I do believe what Tyler is getting at here, that the team would just rather, or some reporters, some media, some content creators even, would just rather ignore it because it could be controversial by talking about it. And if, God forbid, you actually have a favorable opinion towards what Tyler put out there, that the fans or the team, the PR department, is going to come at you. And I got more stuff I could get into from the article, but I don't want to spend a whole episode talking about it. It's just, long story short, man, I think Tyler's a little he's a little annoyed with some of the media, and not just how they cover the team, but their lack of I don't want to say support for what he put out there, but just kind of ignoring it like it was nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting, and to each their own, right? I think when it comes to that, and listen, I don't deal with the Buffalo Bills PR department, so along those lines, like, I don't know what relationships are like. I don't know what relationships are like for some members of the media with Sean McDermott, and what that looks like. I'll say there were a couple instances where I was surprised, where it's just like, okay, hey, maybe they're just not going to touch this, and that's their right too. I mean, honestly, I don't feel like there was anything, and I could be wrong, right? Like, but talking about things from years past, if someone said like, hey, I'm not going to do a ton in covering this, I'm okay with that. I really am. Like, it wasn't like, oh, the Bills PR department obviously got to everyone and no one is talking about this. I mean, the day that it came out, Chopin the Bulldog had Tyler on WGR. Like, that's the flagship station for the Buffalo Bills. So, for whatever that is worth, like, there was nothing that came down and said, no, you can't have this guy on the air. Or, I don't know, maybe something happened after the fact. Maybe there was an angry phone call or something. And I'm just speculating. I literally know nothing when it comes to this. But, you talk about it. Perino and Talbot were on it. The Buffalo Plus team, Mike Catalana, Jenna and Dan,
and they were fair too. And they were fair.
It was being talked about. I mean, the one thing I guess I'll just say, it's like, listen, if there are people that cover the team that don't like what he reported, that is their right too. And that is, and that part is, there were some names that he mentioned in the most recent article. And I get that part, right? If you take umbrage with maybe what they said, but just like myself as a reader, I don't have to agree with everything that he writes. I don't have to like everything that he writes. Somebody else that does the job, they might disagree too, because we can say what we want, right? Like, oh, you're supposed to be objective. You're supposed to this, you cover the team, you do that. This business, everything, at least in my mind, right, it is built on relationships. The people out there railing on, anonymous sources, like, those are relationships that he has. Tyler's relationships make him great at what he does. And maybe somebody else that covers the team, they have relationships that maybe they didn't love what you wrote. So I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying I get it.
I do too. I understand in today's market is different than the way it used to be. And I think there is I don't want to say a dying breed, but it is becoming more and more of a minority where players or I should say reporters, media cover a team a little bit, I don't want to say harsh, but certainly more critically than now because of a lot of the reasons, from access to being able to get certain players to just not being worth the headache, which the one last thing I do want to read from here, because he talks about that, by and large, he says there are reporters doing extremely good work. Don't get me wrong, but most, by and large, don't view something like this worth the hassle or headache. The trend has been obvious in the 13 years I've covered the NFL full time. Given the choice, most would rather not become embroiled in the Twitter crossfire for 48 to 72 hours. Threats aren't necessarily fun. I think he's frustrated that too many people out there just cover this team and they're worried about fans and likes and, retweets and stuff like that. I don't know. I will continue to defend him as a person for people who are attacking personally. Let's just leave it at that. I mean, like you said, I think you said it perfectly too. You should have a right to have an opinion on the substance of his article. It certainly wasn't for everybody. I don't know. I really take issue with some fans mainly poking at him and making it personal, like he's trying to get somebody fired.
None of it should be personal.
Right.
No one should be, so it's.
And according to him, the timing, I know the timing is the other thing too. You know what? The inspiration to do this, showing that shit hasn't changed, was after they lost to Denver. And he said that in an article, he said that on a podcast, so that's when he sat down and really started hammering his home. And the story came out when it got finished. And Steve Tasker saying that, he put it out there for personal profit. Well, of course he did, Anthony. This is his life. This is his livelihood. Of course, it's his business. He's running a business. Of course he's putting up, if I'm trying to sell ads on this podcast, it's the same thing. This is what we do. I mean, come on, man. That's just dumb. Let's move on because there's too many other fun, juicy shit to get into. This is a big game from the Bills. They're playing Dallas. Before we get into this current Bills team, this current Dallas team, we're up there in age a little bit. We both know that the Bills lost 4 straight Super Bowls. We both know that 2 of them were against Dallas back to back. We were both old enough to not just read it as an anecdote in history, but actually be alive and to watch the games and remember. What's your memory of those 2 Super Bowls? Like, how well do you still to this day remember those back-to-back Super Bowls against Dallas?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't remember too much.
Yeah.
Right. I remember the second one was away at college, and there was like I wasn't the as tense as a Bills fan like I am now, where today if the Bills go to the Super Bowl, I'm sitting by myself in a room watching this game. But here I am with like all these guys and girls that I go to college with, and everybody knows I'm from Rochester and a Bills fan and this and that. And I mean, there was probably 45 seconds left in the game. And I just stood up and walked out the room. And like all the girls that were watching the game with us, I went, "Oh, Anthony." I was just had this sad look on my face. But as far as like remembering the game itself, I don't remember anything from it. And I don't know if it's just because it was, so new in that time, and obviously not the social media world. And you'd literally be waiting for the 6 o'clock news to get an update or get the news on the team, or read your paper. Like, it was very different than it is today. It wasn't this all-consuming piece. So other than just walking out the room and getting that sympathy and pity, that's about all I got.
I remember the first one, which was the Bills' 3rd Super Bowl, for everyone younger people out there who may not know that or remember. I felt really good going into the game because they were going to their 3rd straight Super Bowl. I'm like, all right, law of averages says they're going to win this game. Plus, that was the year the miracle comeback against Houston at home when they were down 38-3. That was the year they went into Pittsburgh and smacked the shit out of them on the road afterwards. So anyway, the Bills were road warriors, and then they beat Miami and Pittsburgh. I think that might have been the order. Don't remember. But anyway, they won 3 straight games to get into the Super Bowl. And they didn't have home field advantage. And I felt really good going into the game. And I worked at a gas station on the west side called Quick Fill. I'm sorry, not Quick Mart. Quick Fill. I was working there the day the Bills came back and beat Houston. It was not on TV. We were listening on the radio because it was never, I was not one of the 800,000 people who claimed they were in attendance for that game. I was literally working as a cashier at a gas station. Anyway, I remember not being scheduled to work, but wanting to work the Super Bowl because I was so superstitious that because of I was there for the other games, they would carry on to the Dallas game. It didn't. They got their asses kicked, and you knew pretty well early on that that game was going to get ugly, and it surely did. And then the last game, the Bills were actually up at halftime. And then I think it was Thurman who fumbled the very first play of the third quarter. James Washington runs it back for a touchdown, and there it goes. So anyway, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons people hate Dallas Cowboys anyway, if you're not a Dallas fan. But for a Bills fan, that's probably those 2 years are probably the biggest reason why so many Bills fans hate the Cowboys, man. But it's a new year. And I really, let me say something. I got a kind of a hot take. I think the Bills are the best team in the AFC right now. I don't know if the Bills are going to make the playoffs, but I think the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the AFC. I absolutely think they're better than Kansas City. I don't think last week was a fluke. This is now 3 straight years that they've won in the Kansas City and beat them. And it should be 4 straight times, I should say, because of 13 seconds. If it wasn't for 13 seconds, this is 4 straight times they would beat the Chiefs all on the road, too. I think they're better than the Chiefs. The Bengals are a better football team if Joe Burrow's out there. I still believe that, but he's not. I don't trust Jacksonville. Baltimore's very good, and they might have home field, but I still don't think that their offense can keep up with the Bills, and I think the Bills' defense can play well enough. And Miami's a good team, but they're really wishy-washy, and the Bills play really well against Miami, just like they play really well against Kansas City. I think the Bills are the best team in this conference right now. It's crazy to say that because they're 7-6, but I feel that way.
Yeah, I can understand why you feel that way. I'm not there with you yet. And it is so interesting, right? You talk about whatever, Al Pacino, any given Sunday, game of inches, this and that. But you think to things, it's like Kansas City very well could have won that game last weekend.
Sure.
Along the same lines, Baltimore Ravens very well could have lost that game to the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday. And then you talk about Monday night and the debacle finish that it was for the Miami Dolphins. But you could argue they should have won that game too. So it's like this weird flip-flop, right? Of like whatever multiverse alternate timeline, took place. If those 3 plays just flip, those 3 simple plays flip in each of those games, it's like people aren't down on Miami. They're not down on the Chiefs. Maybe they're questioning the Ravens. Well, right now the Ravens, listen, the Ravens just gave up 30-some points to the Rams that have not been scoring like that. But everyone's saying great things about them because they get a punt return for a touchdown to win the game in overtime type of piece. So, like I said, I can understand why you're saying it, but I'm just like, the AFC is such a weird conundrum of teams, and just with everything, it's like, I don't know what to make of any of it. I'm not going to say the Bills are the best team, but I could also look at it and say, hey, if the Bills make the playoffs, I still believe they can win the Super Bowl. They just literally have to get in. So, maybe I am saying they could be the best team.
Everything you said is right, but I still say I said what I said, man. The Bills are the best team in the AFC, but I want to be real clear about it. I stand by what I said when the Bills lost to Denver, that they were going to live to regret that game. Hopefully, that means whether it's the division or whether it's getting into the playoffs altogether, whatever it may be, that loss against Denver will come back to bite them. Hopefully, they still make the playoffs. I'm not convinced they're going to make the playoffs. I'll know a lot more Sunday at about 8 p.m., though. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. When it comes to the Bills, the one thing I really like about this football team that's not just an abomination, or I should say an anomaly, I'm sorry, is the usage of the running backs now since Joe Brady's become offensive coordinator. Number one, Ty Johnson has a role on this team, and I really like it. But even more importantly, James Cook, who put up some good numbers when Ken Dorsey was still the coordinator. I mean, let's not kill Ken Dorsey too much here, but it's the uses and the way he's being used with Joe Brady. He has become a big weapon in the passing game. He looks like the guy that the Bills wanted in the second round because of his ability to come out and catch the football out of the backfield. Who's the running back from Washington that they tried to sign a couple of years ago? McKissick.
J.D. McKissick.
J.D. McKissick. That type of player. A very useful player in this offense, and you're really starting to see it. James Cook, don't look now, but he's becoming like Pro Bowl caliber running back for the Bills. I think he's third in the NFL right now in yards per scrimmage among running backs. So he's having a really good year, and I think that's been a big difference. And Joe Brady is scheming these guys open. Like that touchdown against Kansas City, James Cook was wide open. The wheel route against Philly where Cook just flat out dropped it, wide open, would have been a touchdown. Getting him in some space, letting him make some moves. If there's one thing that Joe Brady's doing that I really like right now with this offense that we really didn't see when Ken Dorsey was the OC. I don't know if you agree with this or not. There might be more, but I just really like the way he's getting Cook involved in the passing game and in the running game too. Like they're not just all smashing up the middle. You know, I've seen a couple outside sweeps, misdirection counters, stuff like that. That's what I'm liking from Joe Brady right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think from that standpoint, more utilization of James Cook, getting a little more creative with him, that part has been great. Utilizing Ty Johnson, that was not happening beforehand. And here's a guy like he can scoot, man. He gets the ball in his hands. He makes something good happen every time that he touches it. And that is certainly, that makes a difference, right? Someone that brings that kind of energy with what they're doing. You know, the other piece I think too, and you talk about this usage of the running backs, it's working. And right now, I mean, it's an easy talking point to be like, well, yeah, but what's happening with Gabe Davis? What's happening with Shakir? What's happening with Stephon Diggs? Like the wide receivers aren't putting up the numbers. I just say like, just give it a little time, right? It's an ebb and flow. Like sometimes you have to take what the defense is giving you, this opportunity to get the backs involved. I don't want to say I can guarantee you what it's not worth anything, but like as you'll see these defenses then start to be like, listen, we really have to know where James Cook is at all times. I wouldn't be surprised, right, if you start to see more of a breakout from Stephon Diggs, if Gabriel Davis starts to be a little bit more relevant again, because there's been a little bit of a shift here. It's been working for the Bills. Defenses will start to adjust, and I think we'll start to see those regular pass catchers kind of get back to form.
That's one of the big things. One of my big takeaways from this Kansas City game, where the Bills were able to win on the road with literally nothing from Gabe Davis, although he was wide open for what should have been a touchdown, and Josh just didn't see him on that play. But anyway, nothing statistically from Gabe, and honestly, a bad game from Stephon Diggs. He had a bad game. 11 targets, so it's not like he didn't get thrown the ball. Like Gabe Davis only had 2 targets the whole game. Stephon Diggs had 11 targets. They weren't all great throws, of course, but he did have 2 drops, and one of them was just an inexcusable drop near the end of the game. Could have cost them. 4 catches, just 24 yards. Let's give Snead some credit, that Kansas City corner, man. He's one of the best. But he was frustrating Diggs. It was not a good game for Diggs. Diggs has been kind of quiet over the last handful of weeks. You certainly hope and would expect for him to have that breakout game coming. So certainly they're not going nowhere if Stephon Diggs is going to keep getting 4 catches for 24 yards. Let's just be honest about that. They're going to need him.
Yeah, but while it's been a little bit quiet, I mean, listen, I remember Diggs, right? What was it? 6 for 75 and a touchdown against the Eagles. And people might say, well, 75, that's not that big. But like, you pull it all together, like that's a good day. Like, yeah, the late drop, that one was frustrating. And but here's the thing to me that stood out the most with all of it. Like, yeah, he goes 4 for 27, 11 targets, couple of drops, not a great day. But for every narrative that's been there about Stephon Diggs, that video clip, him and Josh Allen walking off the field together, right? Stephon Diggs was happy. It was not I didn't get mine, I didn't this. Like, they won the game. There he is with his quarterback. Like, so I can look at it, it's like, listen, you're going to have games that are going to be great. You're going to have ones that are not. As long as they're winning, like, that's what I want to see from Stephon Diggs, to kind of put all that to bed. Like, he's lockstep with his quarterback. He's smiling. He's happy. He's excited about what took place and that they won the game. It has nothing to do with his statistics. That I was happy to see.
Dude just wants to win, man. He just wants to win. He's already got the bag. He's already gotten his money.
Yeah.
He wants to win football games. He wants to win a championship. And does he want to have 10 catches for 140 yards and 2 scores in an AFC championship win? Of course he does. But I promise you, Stephon Diggs would be just as happy walking off the field of a Buffalo AFC championship victory, having 3 catches for 34 yards and no scores. The reaction and the feeling that he would have about the game would be the same. You know what I'm saying? I think he's a very unselfish player. I really do. And for everything I've heard, and I ain't got a bunch of sources, I certainly don't have Ty Dunn level sources, but everything I've heard about Stefon Diggs from people who know him, dude just wants to win, man. Just wants to win. One last thing before we get into, we'll take a break, then we'll get into Dallas. But the downside of this game for the Bills from the Kansas City game I'm talking about are two pretty significant injuries. We're taping this Wednesday, so we'll see, some of these day-to-day players, how they progress over the next few days. I'm sure we'll find out more about that later on today. But AJ Epinesa is a week-to-week injury with the rib. Had a great interception. Oh. And then Micah Hyde, that neck stinger is just not going away. It's getting worse. And he got it once, went down, tried to get up, and then it happened again late in the first half. He didn't return. Sean McDermott's already said both those guys are week to week. So two big losses on this defense. I guess it's more Von Miller time. Well, I mean, he did do something at the end of the game, so I guess you could football perspective. We always have, when it comes to Von Miller, now we have to say that. Well, from a football side, because we don't want to get into the other stuff, but from a football side, finally saw something a little promising in the fourth quarter. He had a big pressure on that last drive, quarterback hit. But Micah Hyde, I'm concerned about Micah Hyde because I ain't seen nothing from Taylor Rapp this year that tells me that they're going to be fine without Micah Hyde.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see if Taylor Rapp is the one that is going to get the start or not, or if they go with a Cam Lewis or Damar Hamlin in this scenario. Kind of as both of those guys fit a little bit more of the mold of who Hyde is, where I see Tyler Rapp more of the Jordan Poyer, right, and kind of the way they've been doing things, where right, like Poyer will in certain situations kind of fill a linebacker spot. Rapp will come into the game and they'll go with some different looks there. So I don't think Tyler Rapp will be the one to get the start. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, when you talk about the defensive injuries at this point, I'm a little bit resigned to it based on what the defense has been. It just
Taquan might be back though. Taquan might be back by the end of the season, man.
No, and listen, and that part would be great, but I just look at it and I think to myself, and I mean, look at this game even on Sunday. The Bills closed things out against the Chiefs. They made plays when they needed to. And Micah Hyde and AJ Epinesa were not in the game. Other guys stepped up. So it's like, I'm just going to believe that can still happen.
All right, I am back here with Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings. All right, so we talked about Tyler Dunn's piece. We talked about the Bills. They are playing a very good football team this Sunday, the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is 10-3 on the season. They smacked the shit out of the Eagles Sunday night. They're tied with Philly and Frisco for the best record in the NFC and in the NFL for that matter. Here's the thing, man. They're 7-0 at home. So they're pretty much unbeatable at home, but they're only 3-3 on the road. They lost at Arizona, they lost at Frisco, and they lost earlier in the season against Philly. This is going to be a tough game, man. And I'll tell you right now, if the MVP voting concluded today, I think Dak Prescott wins NFL MVP. I think he's the front runner right now for sure. Unlimited 3,505 yards, completing almost 70% of his passes, 28 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions. Talk about him, man. This is this is going to be a formidable task for sure for the Bills defense.
Yeah, it'll be formidable. You talk about him being the MVP favorite. I mean, at least as far as quarterbacks go, right? I think you can still make a case for Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey, but that probably doesn't happen with a non-quarterback in that position. I mean, I will say this, and it's like, obviously for this game, of course, want the Bills to win, but like Dak Prescott is an easy guy to root for. You think of injuries that he has gone through in the past, him as a quarterback, just stuff that he does. Like, I like Dak Prescott. I like him a lot. Like, and that is, something that you look at, and him as a player and the success that he's having this season, with the exception of this upcoming Sunday, I'm happy to see him having it, because I think it's something that's deserved. And, you talk about Prescott too, or you talk about Tyler Dunn. I mean, we all know that this was the quarterback that the Bills were also looking to draft back in that season, right? Where they ended up with Cardell Jones instead. So there's always been this kind of weird link between Dak Prescott and the Buffalo Bills, as Tyler and Jim Manos talked about on their podcast before. But he's playing great football. But again, the game is not in Dallas. It's in Buffalo. There is a marked difference between his performance either at home or in a dome and being on the road and being in outdoor situations. Weather's not going to be bad. But this will be a chance, like he can either really solidify himself as the MVP on Sunday, or the Bills can have it where, there might be a few questions there if Buffalo comes out on top.
Yeah, dude, MVP is literally a week-to-week thing. I would have sworn to you a week ago Tyreek Hill was going to be the first quarterback or non-quarterback since 2012. I think Adrian Peterson won the MVP that year. Are you having a little bit of a heel turn, though? You picked the Eagles a couple of weeks ago to win this game. You're rooting for Dak Prescott. What's going on here, man?
Full disclosure, Dak Prescott is the quarterback on my fantasy football team. But along those same lines, I think back to whatever 2 seasons ago when Dak, broke his leg and he's there on the cart and it's just like in tears, and that piece, it's just like, there are certain quarterbacks in football that you have a lot of respect for. That's a guy I have a lot of respect for as a player, as a leader. Like, to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys is not an easy job.
Nope.
When you talk about expectations. And I don't want to get into the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback and all that type of stuff, but just, the way guys carry themselves. Like, I like the way that Dak Prescott carries himself. So yeah.
And you're right, man. Playing quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, it's kind of like playing center field for the New York Yankees. You know what I mean? There's a lot of expectations that come with that. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I just because I say and I think he deserves to win MVP right now, I'm not dissing him necessarily, but there's other quarterbacks in this league that scare me more than he does. And maybe I might feel different if Bills were going into Dallas. I'll just leave it at that. But I'll tell you somebody who does scare the shit out of me, and on the offensive side, that's CeeDee Lamb. He is a phenomenal receiver. He's got 96 catches this year already, 1,253 yards and 8 touchdowns. And they got a really good tight end too, in Jake Ferguson, 51 catches, 570 yards, and 5 scores. By the way, little props, rewind here, to the Bills defense. Travis Kelce, 5 catches for 83 yards. Or 6 catches for 83 yards. He didn't destroy the Bills like I thought he would. However, 1 yard away, Kadarius Toney's foot. Maybe we're singing a different narrative there because that last play would have covered like 50-something yards. But anyway, my point with Dallas is they got a really great wide receiver. They got an emerging tight end, pretty good offensive line. The running game hasn't been great. Tony Pollard's got under 800 yards. James Cook, quite frankly, has been better than him. Yeah, everything you said about Dak is correct. I don't know, man. I'm not that scared of him. I'm scared of CeeDee Lamb. And I'm especially scared of Micah Parsons. So you want to talk about him? Dude.
No, I don't want to talk about Micah Parsons at all, man. I mean, no, but like, listen, it is the interesting thing when you talk about Parsons that I'll be curious to see, like, going back to Sunday's game against the Chiefs, I did not think it was a great game for the Bills' offensive line, right? A lot of pressure on Josh Allen. Again, you're talking about guys like Chris Jones, game wrecker in the backfield. I get it. Micah Parsons, that same type of player. But Josh Allen is like, that type of quarterback that it's just like, okay, if this side of the line breaks down, as long as this side holds up, I can roll out, I can make something happen. I can, get extra yards with my feet. I can do this piece. So it is going to be, that's going to be an interesting clash this weekend, right? Because is it a scenario where it's just like, yeah, this guy can do whatever he wants to, but 17 is your quarterback and he can do this too. I'm not making a prediction that, that Parsons isn't going to get a couple sacks or anything along those lines. It's just going to be something to watch.
100%. 12.5 sacks he's got this year. He's probably the best defensive player in the NFL right now. Him or TJ Watt or both of them. One of those 3 guys, I think are the 3 best. And then one other player on Dallas individually to really look out for, DaRon Bland. I don't know why I just drew a blank here. DaRon Bland, dude, he's got 8 picks. 5 of them have been brought back to the house for a touchdown. He has returned 5 interceptions for a touchdown That's already an NFL record. By the way, old friend Stephon Gilmore also plays for the Cowboys. He's the other corner right now. Diggs is out. He's hurt. But Bland, dude, 5 picks. And then you think, I love me some Josh Allen, man. Josh Allen over this next month, we might be talking about him being MVP at the end of the season. Feasible if the Bills went out. I'm telling you now, it's very feasible. But Josh does as a penchant for throwing some picks. And this is the wrong dude to be throwing a pick to, man. It's one thing for Josh to turn the ball over. You keep the ball away from this dude. If this ball touches his hands, that can be 7 against the Bills, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is a talented Cowboys defense. Like, you think of the secondary. I mean, hey, props to Stephon Gilmore, still playing good football, right? Even at this age. You talk about Bland, a playmaker, and what he's doing. This game, I mean, this is one of those games, like being in the 425 window is great. This should be a primetime game. Like, this should be the Sunday night football game, because there's an expectations, at least from me, that there will be like fireworks in this kind of batshit crazy back and forth, plays by the defense, plays by the offense, like just sort of almost a ping-ponging back and forth. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. And before we get to our predictions, I got three keys to the game for the Bills. I want to get your thoughts on these two. Number one is it's critical, I think, to get off to a strong start. Get the fans going. You talked about it. Dallas is not the same team on the road as they are at home. And if you can get off to a good start, that crowd is going to be nuts. First of all, it's always nuts in Orchard Park. Secondly, it's going to be cold. Dallas won't like that. The weather's not going to be that bad, but it's going to be cold. Still going to be cold, man. And this is a huge game for the Bills, and surely the fans know it. Getting off to a strong start, getting the fans involved early in this game, making it difficult for Dak Prescott to be able to communicate, maybe call some audibles at the line, stuff like that. Very, very important. And the Bills, you know, we think of the Buffalo Bills, the 2023 Bills, as a team that's really struggled this season offensively in the first half. But that hasn't been the case now since Brady took over these last 3 games. They got off to a really good start against the Jets. They came out firing against the Eagles, and they scored 14 in the first half against the Chiefs and looked good on offense. So they have been starting out pretty good offensively, at least for sure. And I think that's a key. One of the 3 biggest keys to the game for me is getting out to a fast start and getting this crowd, keeping them, and they'll be there early on, keeping them fired up. That's going to matter.
No, 100%. I mean, listen, do you want to get into predictions now, or are we like, no? Okay. I don't want to jump the gun then, because you were putting it on the tee for me, and I was ready. Like, am I supposed to say what I think is supposed to happen here? So
not yet.
I'll hold off on those comments.
That's fair. And then, like I said, with respect to Dak, there's 2 guys, one on each side of the ball, that are just scaring the shit out of me because they could do damage and win the game. And one, CeeDee Lamb. So my other key, or my second key, whether it's hopefully as much Rasul Douglas as possible, not Christian Benford, whoever it is who's got that task, it's limiting CeeDee Lamb. And Sean McDermott's pretty good. If nothing else, he's pretty good at fighting, this is the player that could kill us. Let's make sure this doesn't happen. So if it's going to take double coverage, some over the top, whatever it's going to be, let Michael Gallup beat you. Let one of these other guys beat you, man. I do not want CeeDee Lamb having 9 catches for 160 yards in a score, because that could result in a Bills loss.
Well, Brandon Cooks is, honestly, to your point, right? Brandon Cooks is a guy that concerns me, because it's just like, okay, if you scheme against CeeDee Lamb, and, I mean, listen, containing him might be like 7 catches for 85 yards, right? Like, that's not really containing, but you get where I'm going with it. Brandon Cooks has that big playability. He started to come on for them as of these past few weeks. Very quiet start to the season, but they have good weapons. The point I'm making, right? You have the bona fide star. You mentioned Ferguson before, right? Like, just kind of that insert random tight end for the Cowboys and able to do things. That's not giving him enough credit, right? The guy is making plays, but it just, sort of this name that comes out of nowhere. Yeah, they have guys that can make plays. Like, this is a game that should be a track meet. When you look at their weapons and how they can score and how they've been playing, it is going to be, you're going to have to put up some points. Either team is going to have to put up a lot of points to be able to win.
Agreed 100%. And then the last thing, Look, I'm not delusional. Micah Parsons is elite. Like I said a few minutes ago, one of the best players in the NFL. Tall task, but the Bills this season have had good success at limiting great edge pass rushers. Max Crosby earlier in the season, he didn't do nothing for the Raiders. Chase Young, they kind of shut him down when they played Washington earlier. Bradley Chubb for Miami did nothing. He plays on the edge. And the Bills, like I said, the tackles have had good success. Basically, what I'm saying is don't let this dude eat you alive. He can. Like the guys who have hurt the Bills the most this season, like Chris Jones last week was just unblockable. Quentin Williams, at least the first time the Jets played the Bills, he was unblockable. These guys, these interior guys killing the interior of the Bills offensive line. I feel like the tackles have had a little more success against the edge. But yeah, man, Mike is going to get one or two plays, but just don't let him wreck the game because he can, certainly.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, it's this is going to be one of those two when you look at a player, right? One player that you can say is a game wrecker on that defensive line and not taking away from anyone else, right? But Micah Parsons is one of one. This will be interesting from a Joe Brady standpoint and like, okay, what he has planned, how he schemes guys open, where he, runs the extra protection to different pieces. Like this is going to be a true test for him.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into it, man. Game predictions time. I'll let you go first, man. Give me your forecast for this game, and I ain't talking about the weather.
All right, I got three things for you, and I almost jumped into it earlier, but obviously, my bad there.
Give them to me, man. Let's go.
Stephon Diggs is going to be the best wide receiver on the field on Sunday.
Ooh, that'd be nice. That's juicy. Okay.
At the end of the game, Josh Allen will firmly be back in the MVP race for the NFL.
I like where you're going.
31-28 Bills.
31-28 Bills.
Yeah, it's going to be a shootout. Like it is not going to be Dak Prescott is going to play well. There is going to be plenty of plays that are made here. But for the Bills, this is going to be one of those like, even last weekend, right, as great as I thought Josh Allen played and different things that they did, defense stepping up when they needed to. This is going to be that weekend where it kind of falls to the offense, kind of like what the finish should have been against the Eagles, right? Where like, hey, the offense makes a play and the game is over type of scenario. So that's what I'm going to go with. And 3-part prediction this week. So,
all right. I like it. I am going to also pick the Bills to win. I think, look, it's not going to be a low scoring game. I'd be stunned if it's a low scoring game. For me, the Bills holding them to 3 instead of 7. I mean, that's obvious for any game and any team, I'm sure, but that really means a lot. And if you could, Dallas is going to get theirs, but maybe that one turnover, there'll be a battle of turnovers, which, to be fair, is completely advantage Dallas going into this game. Again, Dak's got 6 interceptions. Josh is more than double that this season. But if the Bills can protect the football and not turn it over, I like them to win. I wasn't creative enough to come up with a score. I had them winning by 7, though, because I could picture in my mind Dallas having the ball with some last-ditch chance to win the game, and then the Bills' defense holding. I'm going to go Bills 7, so I'm going to say, let's go something weird. Let's go like 30-23. 30-23, but what did you say again? You said 31-28?
31-28. 30 is a different number. You don't see that too often. So.
No, you don't. No. All right, so 30-23. I'm going to go. Buffalo Bills win, which, I mean, let's not jump the gun, but let's jump it a little bit. If the Bills win this football game, they're playing the Chargers, who now have no Justin Herbert on the road, and then they're playing the Patriots. Yeah, I mean, I can't even think about fathom losing that freaking home to the Patriots. That Week 18 game against Miami, worst case is to wrap up a playoff spot. Best case, if Miami just loses one of their next 3, and they play Dallas and they play at Baltimore, the AFC East is still in play if they win this football game.
I know. So, I've done all the math. I've looked at all the things, and then it's like, don't get ahead of yourself, man. Like, not to sound all like, I agree. The next opponent is the most important one, but you let's put it this way. After beating the Chiefs on Sunday, now you can see a path, right? Like it was even beforehand, like, sure, there's a path to the playoffs. Like,
path to division.
Talk to me after the game. Like now you can actually look at it, and even if they lose on Sunday, you can still look at it.
Yes, it will be difficult though. Getting 10 wins, I'm not sure. But I will say this 10 wins, and if they got to lose one game, if they have to lose one of these last four, this is the game to lose because it's a non-conference loss. You do not want to you're going to lose every tiebreaker in the world if you get to 6 conference losses. So throw that out there. Anyway, before I let you go, man, one last Dallas Cowboys item here. Long storied franchise. Who's your favorite and your least favorite Cowboys of all time?
Well, I mean, before, and I kind of let the cat out of the bag, I mean, probably would have said Dak Prescott. So I'll go with my second favorite for this, Tony Romo. I always like Tony Romo as a quarterback. I like him as an announcer too, but kind of for the guy coming in, whatever, comes out of nowhere, able to take this franchise, and again, not an easy position to be in. Played hurt. I always thought he was accountable as a quarterback, and I don't know, kind of the gee whiz kind of way he was about himself. Like, I always liked that about Tony Romo. Least favorite Dallas Cowboy, and I will preface this by saying, as a player, easy, Michael Irvin. I hated Michael Irvin, the player. I hated him with the University of Miami. I hated him with the Dallas Cowboys, right? So boisterous and flamboyant. But I will say this, when Michael Irvin, and he was on a show on Fox called The Best Damn Sports Show, period.
Yeah,
horrible name, but it was him, John Saley, a few others. And I used to watch that show every day, and I thought he was great. I thought his passion, I thought his opinions, I thought his work that he did was fantastic. So it was very funny because, usually someone that you just hated as a player, and again, as much as I disliked him, then all of a sudden, becomes this commentator, you think you're immediately going to dislike him. But as a player, that hands down, no questions asked.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to Michael Irvin, Dallas bias aside, when he's on the air, he's one of the best. I think he's one of the best analysts out there. He's one of the best studio pregame, postgame show people out there for sure. Big fan of his in the studio. Hated him on the field as well. For me, my favorite is Tony Dorsett. When I was a little kid, going up from being a little kid all the way through my teenage years, I was obsessed with running backs. I loved all the running backs, and Tony Dorsett was a smooth running back for the Cowboys, man. One of my favorite players as a little kid. Didn't like many other Cowboys. So it's not like I have a bunch of people to choose from. My least favorite Dallas Cowboy, and I preface this by making sure I didn't say player, because there's tons of players I hate, and I hate so many of them, including Michael Irvin. But it's a tie. I'm cheating a little bit. I hate Jerry Jones, and I hated Jimmy Johnson. Hated them. Especially the years, like I said, some of it admittedly jealousy and envy that they beat the Bills twice in the Super Bowl. But it's like Jimmy Johnson disrespected the Bills. He just talked down like what are they even doing on the field with us in both Super Bowl game, or at least the first one anyway, because then he left. But yeah, Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones, it's a tie. So all right, man, that's going to do it for this episode. I really, 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 next week's going to be a Christmas week episode anyway. Dude, let's have a victory, man. I'm going to be a little bit of a homer here at the end. I usually kind of be objective, and we'll react to whatever we got to react to. F that. The Bills got to win this football game, man. It will make Christmas week so much better.
There wasn't enough pressure on this game to begin with, Pat. You just now added a whole other layer. So it's all good, man.
If the Bills beat the Cowboys, I'm sending Tyler Dunn a text, and I am going to demand that he writes a retraction and that he writes a brand new story that Sean McDermott deserves another extension. Follow Anth on Twitter at Anth Marino. Make sure you check out Buffalo Rumblings. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. I feel like I say this when I have you on the show sometimes. I don't know who my guest is going to be, and I don't know what we're going to be talking about, but there will be a show tomorrow. Talk to you later, guys.